Good morning, everyone, and welcome. It's FPC Radio Live, and yes, it is the start of the NFL 2022 NFL season. It is Thursday, September the 8th, 2022. We have the Buffalo Bills taking on the defending Super Bowl champion Los Angeles Rams tonight in Los Angeles to start this great season. And John, 7.5 merciless months are finally over. We're finally going to get some real football tonight.
Yeah, excited to see it. I think it's going to be a wide open season, as it really has been for the last several years. You know, teams come out of nowhere, like the Cincinnati Bengals last year, went from 4-11-1 to AFC champions. Who that team might be this year, who knows? But
did you just say who dat?
Game.
Did you say who dat? Are you buying into that?
I'm up for anything. Nothing surprises me anymore in the NFL because teams get turned around quickly. You find a great young quarterback like Cincinnati did with Joe Burrow, and you're on your way.
Yeah, and look, I mean that's the beauty of the NFL, and one of the reasons why it's so, it seems to not be able to trip over its own feet at all, and it's pretty. It's a pretty intense league. It's hardly ever gets in its own way, and I think in this case you see teams that, like you said, go from bottom of the barrel one year to Super Bowl contender the next. And I mean, hell, John, we almost last year had a Super Bowl that consisted of the Buffalo Bills versus Cincinnati Bengals. Come on now. Think about that. Like that's an absurd statement to make. But as much as everything is different, though, everything does still kind of stay the same because, the one person who does basically have an open invite to the Super Bowl is Tom Brady. So he tends to sway the curve a little bit here. But today we're going to talk mostly about the NFC and then, of course, about tonight's game. Because, of course, we get to give predictions tonight, John. This is great. We finally get to show our lack of knowledge to the masses because we're going to put our predictions out on paper and then obviously backtrack as soon as the game's over and we were wrong. But we will get to that in a minute. No, I mean, look, the Rams are the defending Super Bowl champions. They have been a team that have been knocking on the door for a number of years now. Obviously, we've talked about them going to the Super Bowl back in 2018 when they lost to the Patriots, of course. And this year they finally got over the hump when they got Matt Stafford and a couple other pieces. However, Matt Stafford's been a little banged up at 33 years old. I mean, it's not surprising. I mean, he's not the healthiest quarterback out there. No more Vlad Miller. They've added Allen Robinson. That's an intriguing signing on offense because, again, how much of it was a Chicago problem and how much of it was an Allen Robinson problem? We're going to find that out here with Los Angeles as he tries to replace Odell Beckham Jr., who's still, quite frankly, a free agent, which is a little surprising. I mean, it's not crazy because he's still injured and coming back from injury, but I'm surprised that there hasn't been more noise around him as a free agent addition for certain teams. But anyways, this is about the Rams. The Rams are returning a lot of the same players. However, I'm going to find it very tough for this team to repeat. I'm not going to say that they're not going to be a good team, but I'm concerned about Matt Stafford. And quite frankly, I'm just concerned about, the ability to do it all over again. We see how hard it is and how many teams and players just aren't able to do it. So what are your thoughts going into this Rams season?
Yeah, it's a difficult thing to do. In the last NFC team that went to back-to-back Super Bowls, the 2013 and 2014 Seattle Seahawks, and that had a lockdown defense and an emerging quarterback in Russell Wilson, and they were able to get back to 2 Super Bowls and haven't been back since. So you know how difficult it can be. I think the Rams are still going to win the division because San Francisco is still in a little bit of limbo, deciding on, is Trey Lance really the quarterback? I mean, he's going to be starting these games, but you still got Jimmy Garoppolo there as a backup, so that can cause a problem. As often is said, if you have 2 quarterbacks, you have none. I think Arizona's going to kind of slightly peel back a little bit because they had a really noisy offseason, and you know that Seattle's in a complete rebuild, or at least they should be. So I think the Rams are in good shape to win the division, and I'd put them there with Tampa and Green Bay and my surprise team in the NFC, Philadelphia. I think those are going to be the 4 division winners, and I think that could be your divisional round matchups, come late January. But the Rams will be in the mix, but I think it's tough to go back to back appearing in the Super Bowl unless you're Tom Brady. I mean, again, when we talk about all this stuff, Tom Brady does skewer the numbers because of, going to 10 Super Bowls and winning 7 of them and all of that. It seems like it's his invitational at some point, and he'll be right in there as well this year with Tampa. Heck, you could put him on any team. He'd be there knocking on the door. But I think the Rams will still be strong this year. But I think, let's not forget, they were the 4 seed last year.
Yeah.
It's not like they dominated the season. They got hot at the end. They won some close games, and they were able to just get on a roll. I mean, they won the Super Bowl, which is obviously very impressive, but it's not like they were blowing teams out. After beating Arizona handily in the wild card round, they had that, really entertaining game against Tampa. Then they came back from 10 points down against San Francisco in the NFC Championship game, and then they needed that late drive to beat Cincinnati. They got it done, but it wasn't dominant.
Well, I mean, think about how close they came to being just another punchline, though. I mean, up 27-3. And by virtue of all-out blitz for some god-awful reason, they were able to take the lead and win that game against Tampa. But I don't think any of us thought that game was going to go Los Angeles' way if Tom Brady got the ball back. Like, you know what I mean? Like,
not. Yeah.
There's not a chance in the world anyone's betting against it. And I'm pretty sure some Rams fans were already resigned to the fact that, like, well, sorry, we just got Tom Brady or whatever, So, so it was dangerously close. There's a fine line between having this magical season and what could have been really a absolute, not just from losing that lead perspective, but from just like, you invested all this into Matt Stafford, you did all this, you did all that to blow a 27-3 lead in the playoffs. Like that's a tough hill to come back from. Just ask the Falcons. And that wasn't, and that was in the Super Bowl. So maybe there was a little bit of wiggle room to come back from, but yeah, I mean, look, I like the Rams. I agree with you. I don't think for once in a long time, the NFC West, I'm not saying it's always been a great division, but it's always been competitive, whether the teams are hovering around 500 or, all winning over 10 games. It's always been competitive. I don't think it's going to be that this year. I mean, the wild card, John, is really San Francisco. And the reason they're the wild card is I have no earthly idea what Trey Lance is going to be as a quarterback. And if he's an elite, he doesn't even have to be an elite quarterback. If he's a really good quarterback in his first year, if he has a really solid first year as a starter, the San Francisco team can be pretty dangerous because I think they have an elite defense. I think they have some really nice players on offense. It all comes down to health, obviously, but really the play of Trey Lance. So for now, I'm going to sit here and say, okay, the Rams, they're a betting favorite to win this division, the NFC West. And I really don't see. Again, I agree with you. Seattle, you're starting Geno Smith and you have Drew Lock as a backup. You're not a contender. I'm sorry. No offense to those two, but it is what it is. I don't know. Like I said, San Francisco, you're going to have to kind of figure out. Arizona, we'll see. We'll see. I mean, again, are you going to get the first half Arizona or a second half Arizona? Or are you going to get both? We've talked about that with Cliff Kingsbury teams before. Like, you're going to get a little bit of both. And unfortunately, it follows a very steady pattern of you're going to start strong and finish slow. So at the end of the day, I'm definitely leaning towards Los Angeles. I just don't know. Like, I'll give them the nod, John, going into the league as the team to beat, obviously, for many reasons in the NFC. They're the NFC champions, they're the Super Bowl champions, but looking at the landscape, I think all these teams are flawed. I just look at Tampa as probably having the least number of flaws. And I guess that remains to be seen with Green Bay, what this offense ends up looking like. But right now, I'm looking at Tampa as saying they're in a pretty good spot to take over the NFC again, or at least for this season.
They can, absolutely. The big question mark with Tampa is the interior of their offensive line. That's a concern. They lost their 2 guards. One retired, one signed with Cincinnati. The center Ryan Jensen's out for several months. Not sure when, if he comes back. So that is a concern for Tampa without question. It's a pretty older roster. The defense last year at times looked fatigued or just not really invested. So we're going to have to see what happens with that as well. And as great as Brady is, you do need some help along the way. But yeah, I mean, like I said, I would think that the Rams, Tampa, Green Bay, and I'm maybe higher on Philadelphia than a lot of other people are, though it's kind of a sexy, trendy pick. But I think it could come down to a rematch of the NFC Championship game from 2 years ago with Green Bay playing Tampa Bay for the right to go to the Super Bowl, which would have me absolutely, looking forward to many sleepless nights in late January.
Oh, don't worry. We'll have some fun with that if that's the case. Well, and here's the thing too. It's like, you look across the landscape of the NFC. What obviously they're all in question because every team has a 0-0 record, but obviously we look at the AFC West, for example, and I think obviously a lot of people will have their favorites, but there's no guarantee that any one of those teams is definitely going to win the division. You'll probably get that in the AFC East. I'm pretty sure the consensus pick is Buffalo, and it's probably certainly going to be right. But in the NFC, I feel like in the West, the Rams are pretty much the clear favorite. I do think in the South, the Bucs are a clear favorite, although there is this weird uprising for the New Orleans Saints, which I'm not. It's funny how people want to take a 9-game sample size out of an entire career for Jameis Winston and say that he's turned the corner and ignore the rest of his career. No, mind you, this little stretch was with Sean Payton, and Sean Payton is no longer there. I'm not saying Jameis Winston can't be a great quarterback. He certainly has the tools that he can put together to be a very good quarterback. But based on the better part of 6 years of him in the NFL versus 2 to 3 month stretch last year, I'm going to lean a little bit more towards what we've seen for the majority of his career, and that is a guy who is boom or bust. He's going to show you elite level of quarterback play and make some plays that you're just like, wow, that's why he was the first overall pick. But then you're going to be scratching your head and being like, why was he a first overall pick when he's still making boneheaded decisions like this? So I'm not ready to sit there and jump on the Saints bandwagon just yet, so to speak. I know there's some people out there that are already, putting them ahead of the pack, and I'm just like, yeah, I don't know about that. The Falcons, I think, are going to be a bad team. In the NFC, who am I missing in the NFC South? What am I? Carolina, thank you. Well, that's why. I mean, who the hell cares about Carolina? You talk about having 2 quarterbacks, but really having none. Example A. Carolina. Now, again, that might be a little bit harsh on Baker Mayfield, and I think he can do some nice things. But in terms of contendership, I don't look at Carolina as a threat. I just don't see enough talent on that team for them to compete and keep pace with some of these other teams in the NFC. So right now, the NFC South to me is the Buccaneers to lose. I'll still say that for the NFC North and the Packers, although the Vikings are just an enigma to me. You know what I mean? Like we've talked about Kirk Cousins before as being like the least impactful good quarterback. Like, you know what I mean? Like, does that make sense?
Oh, absolutely.
Like
yeah, there's players in the NBA that are like that average 25 a night, and you go, that's nice, but what does it really lead to? It leads to a 34 and 48 squad, and that's kind of what you get with Kirk Cousins. Let's not forget, when he went to Minnesota in 2018, that was a team that had lost to Philadelphia in the NFC Championship game. And I remember going into 2018, everyone picked the Vikings to go to the Super Bowl because they were getting an upgraded quarterback, and then they didn't even make the playoffs in 2018. Chicago actually won that division with Mitch Trubisky. I love talking quarterbacks in the NFC South, and this is going to be right up your alley, right? Because Atlanta's starting quarterback, Marcus Mariota, was the second overall pick in the draft. Carolina has Baker Mayfield and Sam Darnold, who were first and third in the 2018 draft, and Jameis Winston was the first pick in the 2015 draft and the best quarterback in the division by far was the 199th pick 22 years ago, and he's 45 years old. And I think he could go out and play left-handed. and be better than those other quarterbacks. That's what the disparity is between top to bottom in that division as far as the quarterback. But as far as the Vikings, yeah, they're a talented team, and I think the coaching change may help because you're going from Mike Zimmer, who's a really good coach, but a defensive coach, to now Kevin O'Connell, who's from the McVay tree, who those guys have had success, especially in the offensive end, and that might be player friendly for Kirk Cousins. And look, he's got weapons there. He sure does. Justin Jefferson's a top 5 wide receiver. Adam Thielen's a really good wide receiver, and Dalvin Cook is a versatile back. So they could be a problem for the Packers. They open up the season at home against Green Bay. That's going to be a pretty interesting matchup on Sunday.
Well, I think, and that's the reality of it is that's why I want to see what this Green Bay offense is. Because I voiced my concerns because, even with Devontae Adams last year, they were a top 10, barely on the fringe, which, look, we're talking points per game, but this is the way the league works now. This is how it works. Like, you need to be able to score points. And, I'm not saying Green Bay couldn't, but you're taking a large element out of that game or out of that offense now that barely had you top 10 to begin with. So how do you make up that offense and how do you keep pace with the rest of the league? I think Green Bay's defense is probably a lot better than I think a lot of people give credit for. And I think we're going to see that play out certainly this season. But when push comes to shove, though, it's kind of like the Tom Brady thing. It's like, I'm not going to, when you're asking me, am I going to pick a team led by Aaron Rodgers versus a team led by Kirk Cousins? Well, despite his flaws, I'm 100% taking an Aaron Rodgers-led team over a Kirk Cousins-led team. So,
sure.
So unless anything changes drastically or we get through the first few weeks of the season and you realize, okay, Green Bay didn't do enough on offense for them to right this ship. Because, look, there is concern. Aaron Rodgers just – in a lot of cases, like Tom Brady, especially as they've gotten older, sometimes they're a little bit less patient when it comes to working with new offensive pieces. And if they're not trusted, if there's trust issues, that can, that can really make things worse down the line. So I'd be a little concerned if things stumble out of the block or if there's an injury or two, especially to a guy like, you're maybe expected, but to a guy like Randall Cobb or something like that, one of those safety blankets, all of a sudden, there's turmoil and this team isn't winning games that they're supposed to. And next thing you know, Minnesota's got a 2-game lead in November. And you're like, uh-oh, is Green Bay going to make the playoffs or are they going to have to go on the road for, 4 weeks in a row to make it to the Super Bowl? In which case, I don't know if they can do that.
Well, they're only 5-4 with Rodgers as quarterback at Lambeau, so maybe the road is a better way. Actually,
that's true.
The year they won the Super Bowl, they won 3 road games, right?
That's true.
At Philly, at Atlanta, and at Chicago. Now, that team had an outstanding defense. I think the Packers have a chance to have the best defense in football. They have 7 first-round picks on defense, and they all play, and they're all really good players, whether it's Jair Alexander at cornerback, Eric Stokes at cornerback, and Darnell Savage at safety, all first-round picks. I think Rashawn Gary is sitting on a monster year. He's a pretty similar player to what Dante Hightower was with the Patriots, although he's a little bit bigger. And Kenny Clark is a top-notch interior lineman, and then they added 2 Georgia studs in the first round to add to that defense. They may have the best defense in football. I'm not being hyperbolic. They have an outstanding offensive line, excellent running back tandem, right? Aaron Jones and A.J. Dillon. It comes down to the receivers, and they're paying Aaron Rodgers $51 million this year to make sure that those receivers can produce. So it's going to be up to him, and he's going to have the right attitude, which, again, he's going to be 39 in December. I don't think he's going to have a personality change at this point, but, he's going to have to try to make those guys work and go from there. But I think this game Sunday is big. I mean, it's a 17-game schedule. I get it. And the first week sometimes doesn't matter. But if the Packers can go into Minnesota and win, then it's going to almost be business as usual in the NFC North. And I'm sure Minnesota might start doubting itself, and Green Bay will feel good and feel that they're still the team to beat in that division.
Well, and that's why it's so important, the 17 games, So I apologize. I'm trying to hold back his sneeze. If you can't tell on camera, folks, that's why my face is not weird looking. It's always weird looking, but that's why I'm making weird faces right now. I'm trying to.
Well, you're like Brady. I think you had some work done, and you're coming back for the season. So,
well, if this is what you call work done, then I'm going to have to go get my money back, okay? Because
I think he does too.
Yeah, well,
what? That's the case.
Like I said, Well, it remains to be seen. It's one of those slow. It's gonna. Don't worry. It'll look fine. It'll look fine when he's holding up his 8th Super Bowl win at the end, or Super Bowl trophy at the end of this year. It's all going to come together. But, anyways, let's shift a little bit to. So we talked about the NFC West. Talked about the NFC South. Talked about the NFC North. So please, John, tell me, why are the Philadelphia Eagles going to win the NFC East?
They played really well at the end of last year. They developed into the best running team in football, which I get it in 2022 maybe isn't what you want to be. Jalen Hurts, it's going to be on him. I think he's a quarterback, along with Dak Prescott in this division that have a lot of pressure on them to elevate their team. I think their defense is really, really good. They added 2 players from Georgia. The defense led by Nakobe Dean, who somehow slipped to the 3rd round, and I think he's going to be an outstanding player. Their secondary, led by Darius Slay, is really, really good. Their offensive line is top-notch, and they've added A.J. Brown to go with Devontae Smith to give them a really good wide receivers pair. I think it's their time to win. Plus, teams don't repeat in the NFC East. The last team that repeated as division champ was the Eagles in 2004. It's like one of those ping-pong divisions, where one year it's Dallas, the next year it's Philadelphia, then occasionally the Giants or Washington sneak in. I think they're really, really talented. But again, my biggest question on that team, there's 2 of them, the quarterback and the coach, and that's probably the 2 places you don't want to have question marks. So that's the only hesitation I have. But I think they're going to be better than Dallas this year, and I think they'll win that division because I think Dallas is going to implode this year. I just don't see good things out of Dallas this season. In fact, I think the Giants are going to finish ahead of them. That's my hot take for the day.
Can't you say that all 4 of these? Well, I wouldn't say all 4 because obviously Dak Prescott. I mean, 3 of those 4 teams have big questions at quarterback for different reasons. I think Daniel Jones. I think there's limitation questions. Jalen Hurts is more of the unknown. And then, of course, obviously I already talked about Dallas. And then Carson Wentz, same thing.
Right.
If you get 2017 pre-injury Carson Wentz, Washington could have a pretty good team. They have some nice pieces on defense. They have some really nice pieces on offense. But all we know is it takes one play that goes wrong, and all of a sudden all that goodwill goes out the window. So, however, John, this could ultimately be the most, and it usually always is, and like I said, for various reasons, kind of like the NFC West, where all the teams are hovering around 500 or just below, or they're all winning 10 games. Like, it's always going to be competitive. I think this is a team that, or a division that could ultimately be very, very competitive, especially if you're getting pretty good quarterback play from every team. Like, Daniel Jones doesn't have to be elite, but if he gives you pretty good quarterback play, this Giants team might actually have some pieces to win some games. Now, again, I don't think they're a Super Bowl contender, but this certainly would be the, I'd say probably the most competitive division in the NFC, at least. Because, like I said, I don't see it right now from the other divisions. I could be wrong, maybe in the NFC South, NFC North, who knows? But right now, I just don't see that competition in those 2 divisions being as threatening, I guess, in those divisions as they are in the NFC East.
Yeah, and Dallas lost so much in the offseason. And in camp, they lost Tyron Smith, who's an all-pro left tackle, gone for the year. They traded away Amari Cooper. Cedric Wilson is now with Miami. So, it's a depleted roster on offense. And this is what happens when you pay your quarterback so much money. You can't pay everybody. So you're paying Dak Prescott a lot of money, so you can't afford to pay Amari Cooper. So you trade him to Cleveland for a 6th-round pick, and that hurts your receiving group. So I think Dallas has a chance to be sub 500 this year, after having a 12-5 season a year ago. And let's not forget, they were 6-0 in the division, which is what you have to do. Go dominate your division. They were 6-5 outside the division. I think Mike McCarthy obviously has a ton of pressure on him. A lot of people think he may be the first coach to go down this year, although Jerry Jones is pretty patient with his coaches. I think that the misconception is that he just fires coaches quickly. He doesn't. He's not George Steinbrenner.
Yeah.
He'll be patient with them, I mean, he was with Billy Martin, Yogi Berra, Billy Martin. So I think that's one thing to look at. But I think Philadelphia has to be really good.
What? You didn't hear that from me. George.
Oh, my God, that was fantastic. Oh my Lord.
For
I
those
think
out there
I
wondering
remember
what we're talking about, we're obviously
Yeah.
going down our Seinfeld
I feel like
vortex.
I like when George was, thought he was going to be assistant general manager, and he says, "I think I get it figured out how I can get Bonds and Griffey without giving up too much."
What a great episode! I might have to watch that later, but that would be before football. So, all right, let's shift real quick back to this game tonight, because I do want to give our predictions, because we have kind of talked about each division here in the NFC, and we'll do the AFC tomorrow. But tonight, who do you got winning? Is it going to be the Buffalo Bills, who are the league's and most everyone's favorite to come out of the AFC, or is it going to be the defending Super Bowl champions making another statement as to why they're the defending Super Bowl champions?
I'm all in on Buffalo to win the division, to win the conference, to win the Super Bowl, and obviously to win tonight. But I feel like everyone's copying me, because after last year's Super Bowl, what I always do is, like, the day after the Super Bowl, I'll put out my next year's Super Bowl pick, just kind of something fun to do. So after the Rams beat the Bengals last year in Super Bowl 56, I'm like, Super Bowl 57 prediction, a year before it takes place, was Buffalo, San Francisco. And then I've kind of jumped off of San Francisco a little bit because of what's going on with the quarterback situation. So everyone copied me. Everybody's just taking my pick, my take, and but I'm going to stick with it. I'm going to stick with Buffalo to do everything. But I like them tonight. I do. I think their offense is going to cause some problems for the Rams. The key thing here is that Buffalo's one Achilles heel is their offensive line, and that could be a problem with Aaron Donald if he starts, wreaking havoc, which he oftentimes does. So that could be a concern. But I like Buffalo tonight. Because also, doesn't it almost look too easy to take the Rams? You're the defending Super Bowl champs. You've probably added to your roster, right? You're not weaker than you were a year ago. You're at home and you're getting 2.5 points. It almost looks too easy to take the Rams, which leads me to believe Buffalo's going to win. Plus, this almost is going to feel like a home game for Buffalo, because apparently, 2/3 of the stands are going to be Bills Mafia, which, should be interesting to see. I'll go Buffalo tonight minus the 2.5.
Well, I guess I'm taking the easy pick, and I'm going with the Rams. I'm taking the Rams tonight. No, I think it's not going to be all smooth sailing for Buffalo. I think, the hype has reached its apex, and you're not going to get any more hyped for a team than this. So either they win the Super Bowl or they don't, and they start to take the trend backwards, like every team usually does. I think they stumble a little bit out of the gate. I think they get off to a little bit of a slow start this season. I think the pressure is there. It's real. And as much as people have already put them in the Super Bowl, this team actually hasn't gotten to a Super Bowl. And I think there's a lot of learning to be done between now and that moment. So this is going to be one of those learning moments for Buffalo, and it's going to come in week 1. I'm not saying this is going to torpedo the season. September 8th, it's already over. No, I'm just saying that I think the expectations, I think the excitement is at a fever pitch. And I don't use that word lightly, because I hate that movie, and it makes my blood curdle. But
yeah, it's a pretty bad movie.
Oh, it's such a bad. Oh my God, I hate it. I've had this irrational hate for Jimmy Fallon ever since. It's a long story. I'll get into it during my autobiography, but yeah, I think Buffalo's going to stumble a little bit out the gate, and that's fine. I mean, look, it's opening night. There's so much excitement. I mean, this isn't your normal week 1 game. There's added elements to it. So I do like the Rams in this situation, and I do think we're going to be in for a pretty entertaining game. So that's the most important thing, because neither team that I have, I guess, aligned myself with this season is playing tonight. So it's a little stress-free. So there you have it, folks. That's our prediction. Now, one of us is going to be right, and it's probably going to be me. So at least that's how we will remember it when we get back on the air tomorrow, is that I picked the right one and John picked the wrong one. So thank you, everyone, for tuning in. Like I said, be sure to tune in tomorrow morning. We'll be back. We'll break down this game a bit and, of course, talk more AFC and give our predictions for the rest of week 1 weekend in the NFL. So thank you very much. And, we will talk to you all